Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 1st, 2023 meeting of the Murfreesboro City Planning Commission. We'll call the meeting to order, and we do have a quorum present tonight. Our first item of business is to approve the minutes of the January 11th, 2023 and January 18th, 2023 Planning Commission meetings. You had a chance to read those ahead of time. Did anybody have any additions or corrections?
If there are none, I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motions and seconds. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Then we have our public hearings and recommendations for City Council next, and we have 3 items tonight. Our first item is a zoning application for approximately 9.8 acres located along the east side of Agri Park Drive to be rezoned from CH to PRD, Arden at Murfreesboro PRD. FC Murfreesboro LLC is the applicant. Good evening, Ms. Rush. How are you?
Good evening, Chair Jones, Commissioners. The proposed rezoning is a request to rezone this property on Agri Park Drive from its current commercial highway or CH zoning district to planned residential district. It would be for the construction of an age-restricted 55-plus age senior independent living. These would be apartments and cottages for a total of 166 units. It's located on 9.7 acres, as you can see in the screen area. The project entails 4 story buildings, 1 main building, 4 stories of 1 main building that's located central into the property, as well as individual cottages that are located to the north and south of that property. It's a combination of 1-bedroom units and 2-bedroom units. There's 136 1-bedroom units, and there will be 75 2-bedroom units. Parking on the property is a total of 198 parking spaces, and this includes 163 surface space stalls, as you can see on the drawing, as well as 35 spaces that are garaged. The garage buildings are detached and located along the east property line, along here. The parking is, the applicant is requesting a reduction in the parking from the required parking number. Our zoning code requires parking based upon the number of bedroom units. So based upon the calculation of these bedroom units, it would be 256 spaces required per zoning. And as I said, they're indicating that they're demonstrating that they can provide 198 spaces. When the applicant does their presentation later, they can provide, they're going to provide more additional details as to why they're asking for this reduction. The amenities on the site, as you can see on the site plan here, include on the exterior 2 pickleball courts, pool house, grilling area, as well as patio areas. There's an outdoor second floor balcony with seating and walking paths with benches around the property, as well as a dog park. Interior amenities are depicted within the program book and include things like a community dining room. They'll have meal services if requested by the residents. There's a library, a pet washroom area, indoor storage spaces, fitness center, business center with computers, library, a game room, as well as 2 elevators to get to the upper floors, as well as on-site security and management. The main building design is, again, 4 stories and 46 feet height for the majority of the building. The portion that extends above the main entrance is 50 feet. The applicant will provide more details on the number of stories and the increased height as to why they're asking for these this particular height. It is, again, an exception to our zoning ordinance when you compare it to an RM 16, which is a multifamily zoning district. That zoning district has a maximum height of 3 stories and 45 feet. So it is a slight increase over that. The building materials are cementitious siding as well as brick. The brick material is going to be for the entire first story, and it's wrapped around all 4 sides of the building, and it extends above the front entryway. The cementitious siding is in a board and batten type of pattern or plank pattern, and the colors are primarily shades of gray.
And Marina, I just want to let them know that they do have the most up-to-date architectural renderings printed out in front of them, just for their reference.
Right, so the changes from what was in the agenda, as you can see on the screen before you, is the first floor did not include the brick. So they did respond to staff's request and did make revisions, and that updated revision was emailed out to the commission today, earlier today, and it does include the brick as I indicated. Thank you, Mr. Blomley. So you can see the outdoor, there's private spaces for the units where they have covered outdoor balconies. There are dormer windows up on the top floor on all 4 sides. The cottage units are 1-story with a gable roof and in cement siding with a brick water table on all 4 sides. They do have also private open space, including covered patios. The garage buildings, as I said, are detached, and they're located along the eastern portion of the property with 7 parking stalls inside of each, and for a total of 35 spaces. Solid waste, we had talked about at the Planning Commission workshop, is via a trash chute that's inside the main building. So the residents can take their trash down the hallway and put it into a trash chute. The trash then goes down into a main room, a garbage collection room, and the on-site staff for the building will be providing the service of taking the trash out of the trash room out to the trash enclosures. And if the residents wish to have concierge service, that would be provided by their on-site staff. They could pick up their bags from outside their doorway or from the cottages and take them to the chute. As indicated earlier, the exceptions to the project are, first one is the height and the number of stories as compared to the RM zoning district, RM16. The height is 46 feet, up to 50 feet for the portion that extends above the entranceway into the pool, and the standard is 45 feet, so this is a slight increase. The number of stories that is maximum in RM16 is 3, and they are proposing 4-story building. The parking reduction that is requested is another exception. As I said, it was 256 spaces is what is required per the zoning ordinance, and they're going to be providing 198 spaces. It was asked of staff earlier at the workshop if we had considered something like this before in other senior developments. A lot of the senior developments, if not all of them, that we have within Murfreesboro are part of a complex. Well, they'll provide residential services or nursing facility in addition to the independent living. So when just looking at the independent living, the table I put together kind of helped provided some context for that. So Harmony, or the Crossings at Victory Station, had 93 bedrooms for just their apartment portion of it. And what they provided was 127 parking spaces. What would have been required under today's zoning parking section would be 154 spaces. So this is 27% less than what would be required under today's standards. Adams Place, for just the apartment portion, which was recently proposed, going through the amendment, I think in December of 2022, would be a total of 53 bedrooms and would require 101 parking spaces. What they were providing was 75, which was a net reduction of about 35%, or net of 26 spaces reduced. And then the third one was Autumn Plaza. This one has not been constructed, but it was approved for zoning, and they had a total of 52 bedroom units for a total of 88 parking spaces. They did propose to meet the parking standard of 88, but again, as I said, they have not constructed that development. ART, and the one that's before you tonight, they are providing 198 parking spaces, which would be a net reduction of 58 stalls, which would be 29% lower than what would be normally required. So when you look at the other ones, the Crossings and Adams, it's generally in line with the same thing as what they were proposing. Adjacent zoning and land uses, a lot of the area in this vicinity is zoned RM16, is developed with apartments. There are also commercial businesses in the vicinity. To the west is a mulch facility, as well as vacant land, and Sam's Club is to the southeast. The future land use map depicts it on our current comprehensive plan as general commercial. The city is currently in the process of a proposed update to the future land use map, and upon further studying of that site, it was recommended that this site map be changed to auto urban residential, so the zoning that is proposed would be consistent with what was studied for this particular site. So staff is recommending approval of the zoning for the variety of reasons that the PRD zoning would be developed with something that is similar in use to the other apartments in the area, that the proposed development would be restricted to age 55 and plus with a lot of amenities, something that would be nice to have within our community, and that the PRD is consistent with the future land use map for the proposed update. So staff is asking for the commission's action to be that you open up a public hearing and conduct a public hearing on the item, after which formulate a recommendation to the city council. And again, the applicant's representative and the applicant is here this evening to provide a presentation as well.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Rush before we hear from the developer? Okay.
Evening, Chair Jones, members of the Planning Commission, Rob Mulch of the SEC. Accompanied tonight by Mr. Kevin Woodley with Arden Senior Living. We're here tonight to present to you Arden at Murfreesboro. As we talked about, the site is located just to the north of Highway 96 along the eastern side of Agri Park Drive, just to the west of Interstate 24. We talked about the property is currently zoned CH. We're requesting the change to PRD, Planned Residential, in regard to the 55 and plus age-restricted independent living facility here. As you can see on the map on the screen you see in front of you, the properties to the east, north, and to the northwest are already zoned RM16 and are associated with a multitude of apartment complexes around this property. And then she talked about the property to the south and to the west is vacant property except for the mulch company, which is directly to the south of the Vintage Blackman. You can see up there in the yellow or golden colored area on the upper left side of the subdivision. And then Sam's Club is the pink dot to the south of that side. So that's kind of a little overlay of the surrounding properties on that side. You can take a couple quick views. This is a view in the property as it is today, mostly grass and scrub cedar brush on that side. And this is a view along Ag Park Drive. This is actually at the front of our site on that side looking north. This is a view of Ag Park heading to the south. You can see it's a 3-lane collector road with curb and gutter. It's already got the existing street lights already in place along that corridor. A couple of images of the different apartment complexes. This is Harper's Point to the east of our complex. You can see a 3-story brick and siding on that side. This is the most recent, or one of the most recent complexes to the north. This is the Rutherford Park Apartments, again, brick and siding on that side. And then, of course, to the northwest is Vintage at Blackman. It's a mixture of brick, stone, and cementatious siding on that side, and good 3 stories, plus some architectural elements that kind of promote towards a closer look towards a 4-story element on that side. We're asking tonight, this is roughly about 9.75 units, 9.75 acres. We're asking for about 166 dwelling units. That's roughly 136 units within the main 4-story building on that side, and then 30 cottage homes that are to the north and south of the main building itself on that side. So this is roughly about 17.03 units the acre. This is being supported by City Council providing us with a sewer allocation variance most recently on that side to promote this density on this property. As you talked about, this is going to be age targeted, or age restricted, 55 and above. This is going to be looking at the main building itself having active adult living units inside there, those 136 units. They're going to range from 670 square feet up to 1,400 square feet on that side, and those will be 1 and 2 bedroom mixtures on that side. The cottage homes, roughly about 1,200 square feet each. Now, each building is actually 2 units, so it's kind of like a duplex on that side. So, but each unit has 2 bedrooms on each unit itself on that side. With the verticality that we're requesting and going to 4 stories on this side, it's opening up an avenue for us to provide more open space in the property. So we're actually going to get roughly about 30% open space. So about 10% more open space than what's required per the design guidelines in the city. That also allows us to be highly amenitized, either inside and outside, for the residents of this community. Real quick run through the site itself. We do have 2 access points back out to Ag Park Drive. You can see them there on the north and south ends of the property, allowing us access, and 2 points of ingress egress for health and safety purposes. The main front door of the building on that side is located here in the central portion of that. So this is the main entrance to the 4-story living facility on that side. And then, of course, we got the cottages that are to the north and to the south. And then kind of in this little cove here, we'll talk more about amenities as we come to the presentation, but this is kind of the main outdoor facility. Marina also talked about, we are providing about 35 garage spaces. Now, these will be leased at a first-come, first-served basis for our residents of the development on that side. And then we've also got some other amenities that I'll talk about here in just a few moments. Architecture, I mean, this is a very good-looking building. Even though it's a 4-story facade, we've done a really good job of making certain that we're meeting the design guidelines for having the base, which is all brick, all the way around on all sides, and then a body and a cap in relationship to some cementatious siding on the 2nd and 3rd stories, and then also looking at a 4th story that has more of a board and bat cementatious siding on that side. Again, this is a view from the northwest looking towards the front door. You can see there the main body with the brick up to 3 stories on that side, with your main entrance there with the canopy leading you into the interior structure of the development. This is just another view looking back from the southwest towards the main entrance. Again, here you can see the architectural undulations, the architecture. We got a good variation in styles. And also, you can see here in these images that each of the units has an outdoor balcony or porch. So if you're on the 1st story, you'll have more of a porch, and then you'll have a balcony on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th stories on that side. So you do have a private outside space to your unit. This is a view looking over top the cottages back towards the main facility. Again, this is just kind of a first peek of what you can see in regards to the cottages. Like I talked about, it's 2 units combined into 1 structure. And you can see here you got the front porch elements that allow for some more or less streetscape living along the sidewalks. And again, here's another view of those looking there as well. So I talked about in regards to the amenities in this is pretty highly amenitized. They do have a lot of internal and external amenities. We'll kind of run through some of the internal elements on that side. As you can see on your screen here, as you come through the front door, you'll be greeted by the reception area where your offices are at, but then you start into a library. Come across the main corridor, this is the larger great room on that side. So this is a great gathering space for individuals. They can end up having parties and such there. There's some bar area and that kind of stuff. This is also a great place where you can have little family parties and stuff if you have like a birthday or something like that kind of celebration on that side. So it's a very nice little space for a lot of different activities that can be held on that side. If you're looking down one of the wings over here on this side, Marina brought up our trash chute and our trash system on that side. So here around where you see letter H, that is our trash room on that side. So there's a trash chute that comes from all the floors above down to an indoor collection facility there. Once that trash has been removed from there, it is moved to the outside to the actual dumpster area that's off to the side of the property where the trash trucks will come pick that up. So this is a very, very compacted area in regards to where we try to keep the trash and keep it out of the way of our residents on that side. We're also providing 2 elevators. We're going to be seeing the letters Fs at the 2 ends. We are, again, as this being an age-targeted or age-restricted, development, we're going to make certain we're being able to allow for our residents and their guests to get freely between the 1st floor and the upper stories on that side. Talked about the dog pet or the pet washing station over here with letter D is over on that side on the 1st story. And then also we're looking at in regards to some indoor rentable locker spaces on that side. So if you have some things that you don't want to house inside your unit, but you don't want to have a storage unit off site, there's an opportunity for you to have some rentable space on that side. And then of course we got the letter C, which is the outdoor pool lounge area on that side, which is tied in internally to the actual building itself. Then there's also even more amenities internally on the 2nd floor, in regards to you've got some, wellness rooms, some exercise rooms, some craft space in there on that side. So it's, there's a pretty good accompaniment of amenities for the residents of the community. Externally is just as grand. We do have our pet park on the upper corner on that side. We are providing, like I said, 35 garage spaces that are rentable and leasable. Then also, we're looking at a very vast walkable pedestrian system internally. That's a combination of sidewalks along the actual buildings itself, but also at the north and south end, we'll have a trail system that runs along the outside and comes back and ties back in the sidewalk system. There'll be a couple seating areas along here, so it's a nice place to take a stroll and have a place to sit underneath some trees and relax and have a daily day. Again, this is our main amenity, external amenity feature on this side. You can see we got 2 pickleball courts, a pool. We got an outdoor event lawn with some event lighting space on that side for gatherings. There's also a gas-fired place for sitting around on those cooler evenings on that side. And then a couple different spaces with regards to trellised covered areas with some vegetative covering on it, and also some outdoor grilling stations as well. And then, of course, there's also on the second story coming out of the activities area, there's also an outdoor second story balcony, outdoor seating area on that side that kind of overlooks the whole space. As Marina did point out, we're asking for 2 exceptions for this development on that side. The first being in regards to the parking reduction. Arden owns and or maintains various independent living facilities and other multifamily facilities across the country. Whether there's a whole bunch of them actually under development, kind of similar to this on that side. So they've kind of done their homework. They also have some on-the-ground numbers in regards to a couple of their other independent living facilities they have going today to understand that parking ratio that they feel comfortable with that we're presenting tonight at 1.1 units, 1.1 spaces per unit is a comparable mix to what they see already on the ground with their existing facilities at that side. So when looking at that, Marina did point out that we're at, if you did the 1.1 at the 166, we're looking at about 183 required. We're actually pushing for about 198. So we're actually going over that 1.1 space per unit threshold on that side. We've also looked at the Institute of Transportation Engineers on that side, transportation engineers, to look at their standards on that side. Their number is actually a lot lower than what we're actually promoting today. You can see on the numbers, I've put it up on the screen there. They're actually looking at roughly, a basis in regards to a 0.61 spaces per unit. So we're actually well above what the transportation manual actually calls for on that side. So that would be more like about 102 required spaces, and we're promoting 198 today on that side. Second one, in regards to the height and number of floors, I think that, when looking in relationship to the other apartment complexes that are to our east, north, and northwest on that side, and then a couple of the hotels and such that are associated with this really highly dense, commercialized portion of the interchange area on that side, we feel that this exception is with regards to increasing the building from 3 to 4 stories, again, promotes giving us more active outdoor green space for our residents on that side. And then 2, we're also very comparable in regards to looking at the other heights and variations and styles on that side. And you can say that the hotel that's adjacent to the property on the east is at 4 stories. So this is kind of comparable in scale to what you would be seeing with our building in relationship to the other buildings out around the property on that side. Again, here's our cross-section reference on that side. We had some discussion at the workshop in regards to our height. Marina and I have kind of worked through some things in regards to how the ordinance is written and how our architects have worked through trying to bring the building down. So we're asking for that very small variance to go from 45 to 51 feet in height to allow for that pitch on those roof lines on that side. You can see that one main pitch that's above the front door area is the tallest portion of the building, but it's a very small portion of the building. So in relationship to the actual height of the building itself, the main roof line, when measured from the ground up, is roughly 46.5 feet. So we're asking, technically speaking, in regards to the main structure, about a 1.5 foot variance over the 45 feet. But the one peak that's in the middle of the building on that side kind of pushes us more to that 51-foot height variance request on that side. So that's where we're at in measurements on that. And we're also looking at, in regards to siting this building, we've done a very good job of centralizing the taller building in the middle of the property. So you can see to our eastern boundary with Harper's Point Apartments over there, we're 100 feet from the property line to the building itself. So a pretty decent setback relationship to the scale of the height of the building itself. And then again, to the north and south, over 300 feet between the apartments to the north and the vacant property to the south. And then we're actually about 87 feet off the right of way of Agri Park Drive. So we've done a good job of centralizing that building on the property, so it doesn't seem, if the height variance is allowed, it won't seem that overbearing to the surrounding properties along that roadway. I appreciate your time and consideration, and I'm here for any questions now or after the public hearing.
Okay, any questions?
I just got a clarification because I heard both come out of your mouth. Are we age targeted or age restricted?
Age restricted, 55 and above.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you,
Thank you
Mr.
all.
Melchan. All right, so we will open the public hearing tonight. For those of you that would like to speak, you'll come to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comments to the Planning Commission. And please do direct all your comments to the Planning Commission and not to other members of the audience or the developers. We want to hear what you have to say, so we'll go ahead then and open the public hearing for this item and ask anybody to come forward that would like to speak, either for or against this item. Anybody? Okay. Then we will close the public hearing. And we will ask for other comments and questions from the Planning Commission.
So I've got a couple, and the first one I should know the answer to, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Back to Mr. Wright's question, we are saying it's age restricted. It's part of a PRD, but that's not necessarily meaning that the city would have any authority to enforce the age restriction, correct? Because even though it's part of a PRD? And the reason why I'm asking is I know that's the way they're marketing it, but if they choose to sell it in, say, a 5-year period of time, and this turns into just a regular apartment complex, and we're not real keen on the number of parking spaces, how does that work from the city's perspective? Do we have any authority with respects to the age restriction?
I believe we would in this case because it's part of the zoning.
Okay.
It is a representation to them of what their actual use is going to be. And so if they, I don't think this particular one is likely, but if there aren't enough seniors around who are interested in that and they wanted to come back and make it unrestricted, they would have to come back and amend their plan development booklet.
Okay. The last question, or that I have, and I think we covered this, but the garages, are they, if I want to lease it, can I put my stuff in there, or am I going to be, or I've got to park my car in there, and it's part of the, and then the second part of that question, are the garages in your parking count?
They are in the parking count.
Okay.
And regarding the storage and the leases, we do not allow
Okay.
storage. So there's roughly 40 storage units, 48, depending on.
That are in the
that are
building,
in
but
the
they
building.
can't use the garages
No,
for storage?
This is not.
Okay.
You're using it for.
All right, thank you.
How do we plan on enforcing that? It's probably a little harder than in a neighborhood when you see a car in a driveway instead of in the garage. But if this is all shared parking, kind of,
I think on other program books, on other rezonings, we have included text that restricted the interior garage spaces for vehicles only. So we can have that text included with the program book that then would move on to the city council if the planning commission desires that.
yeah, I think my thing's more enforceability.
And
of it.
I would just say we're fine with that, but we enforce that in our lease agreements. Because we've had that problem in the past,
Okay.
where people would just put all their stuff in there. It's a cheaper storage unit, so they just put an immense amount of stuff in there, and then even to the point where all of a sudden you have 3 or 4 residents paying for a garage, sharing the garage as storage. So in our leases, we make it, if you have a garage unit, you put your car in that, and that's it. Mr. Woodley, would you state your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's Kevin Woodley, 4938 34th Street North, Arlington, Virginia.
think the language needs to be in there just in case, just like the other issue. What happens if Arden sells it and then we get down the road and somebody else's lease isn't as strong as Arden's lease? So I think the language would be good to have in there.
In the plan book.
I would say that first, we're going to rely on the developer and the manager to police, and to enforce their commitments. And after that, it's pretty much going to be like any other zoning issue, and the vast majority of them are enforced based on a complaint basis. We have, one zoning enforcement officer and 160,000 people to manage, so that doesn't work. So the reality is if people are parking in the front yard, if they're doing other things, renting out a room when they're not supposed to be, if they're doing something else that violates the zoning ordinance, we primarily rely on complaints. Then our staff investigates and we take whatever action is appropriate. But front line is going to be the developer and then the managers of the project. And that's really true in virtually all of these.
So you're saying it's not necessary for them to put it in the plan book?
Well, I think it is in the plan book, I believe.
I think what Ms. Rush said is we can, if it's not in the plan book, we can make sure that it's added, and as well as the language in there that it will be a part of the individual leases to the tenants.
It's in there.
It's not in the plan book, we can put it into the ordinance so that it's of record and would be enforceable.
Question? When you're looking at the parking space totals, you've got the 35 garage in there, but in fact, those have to be leased. Is that, I don't know what the rules are around what counts and what doesn't. And my second, I'm curious what the width of the garage units are. And if you were to replace that with surface units, how could you get more or less? Consider taking a couple out, perhaps, if you get more spaces.
Ask Mr. Mulchin to come up and address those questions.
I think the garages themselves, since they are a typical single garage bay, that they're more in that, 12, 15-foot range, somewhere in that range, so you've got enough room, because your door, standard single garage door is usually about 9 foot wide, and then you're going to have room for your doors to swing on either side on that side, so you're probably in that 12 to 15-foot range on that side.
There's 35 spaces and 5 garages. So do you have an estimate of how many surface parking spaces there could be instead of a garage?
He's going to whip that right out for you and tell you. See that calculator going.
So we're talking 35 garage spaces at, say, 12 foot of space, 12 foot, just say on average. On that side, it's 420 foot divided by a typical car space is 9 foot. Looking at 46 spaces, so it's about 11 spaces difference.
You'd have to have landscape islands as well.
Yeah, you got landscape and stuff to go along with it.
So probably closer to 40, 42.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really a huge material difference.
Yep.
And I don't know about the ordinance if it's counts leased garage, leased garage, does that count in the parking totals?
For multifamily, we do have a provision in our zoning ordinance that would allow garages to be counted. We haven't done that very often. There are a few times where we've done that. I think we did that with the Manchester Farms Apartments down on Manchester Pike. And Mr. Ives was involved in that, and there was quite a bit of back and forth to make sure that we were comfortable with the language that they were including. And that was a straight RM16 zone property. It wasn't a planned development, but that we were comfortable with the language that they were including in their leases, and to make sure that those spaces were used for the intended purpose. And I would assume that we would probably go through that back and forth with the applicant on this project as well. Mr. Woodley may be able to speak to
since he has experience in this market, speak to how quickly, or what the demand is for those garage parking spaces and how quickly those will absorb by his tenants?
Yeah, I would say that they probably lease within the first 50 units. I mean, we've gone back at some of our older buildings and not built garages because it's tough under the zoning ordinance, but you are in certain instances allowed to build carports. This demographic just likes, they're used to parking their car in a garage, sometimes have old cars that they put in the garages. It's not that much of a drastic change from a lifestyle to say, oh, I still have a garage. So if we could build 80 garages, we'd probably build more garages, but it just doesn't make sense. So our typical development has between 35 and 45 garages. And then, like I said, we've gone back in certain places like Charleston, Savannah, you get a ton of sun, and added the carports. And it's the same thing, that those will lease up just as quickly.
Okay.
Thank you.
What other questions, concerns, comments?
There are none. I'll make a motion that we approve, subject to all staff comments, and along with working out the wording on the garages to make sure that they do what they're saying they're going to do.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. Our next item is a zoning ordinance amendment regarding amendments to Section 34, floodplain zoning. The City of Murfreesboro Planning Department is the applicant. Good evening, Ms. Knopf. How are you?
Good evening, Chair Jones and Commissioners. The purpose of this zoning amendment is to make changes to Section 34 of the floodplain ordinance. As you're aware, new flood maps were recently revised with the restudied portions of the Stones River watershed, and the city received a letter of final determination from FEMA in November stating that the new maps will become effective on May 9th, 2023, giving the community a 6-month deadline to adopt them into their ordinance. The city's floodplain regulations are contained within Section 34 of the zoning ordinance, where amendments have been made to include not only the revised panels, but those map panels where city limits have encroached onto neighboring jurisdictions through annexation. Other amendments include minor revisions as recommended by the state's NFIP coordinator in order to be consistent with the FEMA Model Floodplain Management Ordinance. These revisions include updated language related to the letter of map revision process and to clarify requirements for areas that are graphically located outside of the special flood hazard area, but still under the influence or adjacent to the special flood hazard area and would be considered a flood-prone area. Lastly, we are defining critical facilities and the higher standards that apply should a critical facility be located in the floodplain. With the exception of critical facilities, I want to make clear that the minimum NFIP standards and floodplain regulations will continue to apply. There are no major changes or higher standards that we are proposing at this time. And I want to be transparent and note that these proposed changes as presented in the draft is a working document in progress, and that FEMA has to review and approve the changes prior to final adoption. So minor changes may be made as directed by FEMA prior to the May 9th deadline. So staff is recommending that the commission conduct a public hearing tonight and make recommendations to City Council.
Okay, any questions?
So, Sam, you may want to address this. How does this get communicated? Because being in the insurance business, this could have some impact. Or does it?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Mr. Halliburton. So For FEMA-initiated map changes, there would be a little bit closer to the time that this becomes effective. There would be public notices that get published
Okay.
by that. I think Jennifer relayed to you that we're targeting a May 9th date for those flood maps to become effective, and so sometime just before that May 9th, we'll publish that those are final. We've already shared it with many in our community that we work with on a daily basis, that the maps have been proposed. We're using them as best available information now for our staff, especially where the standards are higher than the current maps. So that makes sure that work that's in progress doesn't get built to a lower standard and then the map change. So, but we'll use a variety of techniques. We've got a press release drafted right now that we're getting ready to push out as well.
Okay.
We'll be doing, trying to hit all those things, using our City 3 resources to do a spot in the city. And we'll try to push those things out to let everybody know. The map changes that the properties that we know are impacted, we can use GIS now to search that out. And at when this was proposed before, there were about 200 properties that were actually affected. Even though we were updating maps for a good part of our community, there were only 200 properties that were where the floodplain was somehow changing on that property, up or down,
Right.
width, whatever. So it is a fairly narrow group of properties that are really
Okay.
affected in a big way. The flood insurance program, the documents that we require for building and construction, the documents that surveyors and engineers submit will have to rely on these new maps. So we've got to let that, that part of our business community know. And it also will be helpful for the real estate agents to know that those are out there. But the date that the maps become effective, it'll have a very minor impact on just a few properties.
Thank you.
And just let y'all know, the latest draft, this is what was emailed out to y'all this afternoon. Staff's been continuing to work on it and made some fine tuning of some language here and there, and the latest draft that you'll be voting on tonight is at your desk.
Okay. Any other questions before we open the public hearing? Okay. We'll open the public hearing and ask if anybody would like to come forward tonight to speak regarding this amendment. Okay. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. As for any other questions or comments regarding this proposed amendment?
If there are none, I move for approval subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Madam Chair, I did want to take a moment to thank Ms. Knopf, who in her first few months undertook this large project, and she's done a great job leading this project. And it's been a great team effort. We've had a number of folks on our staff who have worked hard. It's imperative that we have this adopted by May 9th so that we can remain in the NFIP, and so that all the folks in our community who rely on flood insurance will be able to keep their flood insurance. So knowing the importance of that, Ms. Knopf has worked very hard, and we appreciate her efforts on that.
Thank you so much. Great presentation, and we appreciate it. All right. Our next item is an annexation petition and plan of services for approximately 146 acres located along Highway 99 south of Clear Ridge Drive. The City of Murfreesboro is the applicant. Ms. Rush.
Thank you. The proposed annexation is in the Rockville area of Rutherford County and includes a total of 146 acres. It includes a portion of the Highway 99 right-of-way of approximately 0.68 of a mile, which is, I didn't write down my linear feet, I do apologize, so approximately 0.68 of a mile. It also includes the elementary school property to the northwest, and also the Rockville Middle and High School properties located along the south side of Highway 99. Initial consultation with Tennessee Department of Transportation, has responded with no objection to the proposed annexation of the TDOT-owned right-of-way. The property is contiguous to the city limits, where the segment starts at the northerly portion of the Highway 99 right-of-way. It is within the city's urban growth boundary for the Highway 99 segment, as well as the middle and high school portions. The property that contains the Rockvale Elementary School is outside the city's urban growth boundary, but the state allows those areas, or any areas outside the urban growth boundary, if they're owned by the same entity, that they could also be brought into the city limit. The purpose for this annexation study was, although this portion of the properties are on the fringe of the city limits, it is in an area where the Rockvale schools are already getting city services. The Rockvale schools are located on Highway 99, where other county high schools and middle schools are located within the city limits. Those are on city right-of-ways. So this would be similar to those schools that we have elsewhere in the city limits. As I said, the properties, both the elementary and the high school and middle schools, already are receiving sewer services. City services such as police and fire are already providing services to those residential subdivisions located in the city just to the north of where this study area is located. So this would just extend a little bit further, but there are already those services in this particular vicinity. City services for any future requests for connections to city sewer that are outside the city limits would not be supported for Rutherford County Schools. So just to make a note of that. The plan of services was provided to the Planning Commission, and the plan of services as contained within that study does demonstrate that city services can be provided to the subject properties as well as to Highway 99. It would have impact of services that pertain to the Highway 99 portion due to the right-of-way, because the city would then become responsible for the maintenance under contract to TDOT, and as well as its operational movements. The Planning Commission is asked for this evening to conduct a public hearing on this item, and then to formulate a matter, and then to make a recommendation to the City Council. I'm here to answer any questions, as well as other staff is here this evening that can help. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rush. Any questions before we open the public hearing? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Rush. With that, we will open the public hearing for this item and ask for anybody that would like to speak for or against to please come forward.
I'll get this party started.
All right.
David Ragsdale, I think y'all kind of know me by now. David Ragsdale, 6971 Highway 99, Rockville, Tennessee. Really, I've just got two questions. Ms. Rush just presented to you the reasons that the annexation of the highway was a good idea. However, on April the 6th, I think we all remember that public hearing, the staff had put forth recommendations that the staff recommends removing the 3,600 linear feet segment of Highway 99 right-of-way from the annexation area to the Ferrari property. If annexed, the city will be responsible for additional roadway and traffic flow improvements on Highway 99 and installing sidewalks on both sides of Highway 99 adjacent to the schools. Annexation of the 3,600 linear feet of Highway 99 right-of-way would not benefit the city and would create a negative impact to the city due to the required improvements. So I'm trying to figure out which side of that is true, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. So I guess I've got a question to the commission. What's the change in opinion? The second issue with this, because this annexation really is two separate issues. One is the highway, the other is the school properties. Mr. Patterson, that is looking at developing the Ferrari property, paid for a traffic study almost a year ago now. And as a part of that traffic study, the the company that did the traffic study had some conclusions and recommendations, which included northern project access to be constructed for the school, southern project access to be constructed for the school, northern project access should be restriped, southern access should be extended, northbound right turn lane should be added, pedestrian crosswalks, sidewalks, another mention of pedestrian connectivity, ultimately to implement any necessary language and traffic control improvements that would facilitate safe and efficient traffic flow within the study area. So if the city wants to have the schools, is the city planning on paying for all of these traffic improvements? Those are the two questions that I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ragsdale. Appreciate it. And like before, I'm sure Mr. Ragsdale remembers, but we'll remind everybody that you'll just come up with all your questions that you have, and we'll make notes of those and then try to address them all at the end of the public hearing. So, who's next? Don't be shy, come on.
Tim Hinote, 2100 Nunley, Rockvale. I'm just wanting to understand, what does the city want to do, or what are your interests in our schools now? And I understand, you know, we have county schools that operate within city limits, but the elementary school is the most concerning to me because I moved into the county to be a county, for my kids to be in the county schools. I don't want my kids to be in a city school. I don't want city involvement in our county schools. And being a county school and knowing, or being an elementary school and knowing that the city schools typically operate 5 and under, or K through 5, my concern as a resident of Rockvale that's going to be in a county limits, I have no voting rights. I have no voting rights against you guys or anybody on any city boards. So I have no decision and no recourse against any of you. But then as a resident who lives in that area who has children that will be in those schools, you know, my memories are fixated on what happened over the last 2 years and the fights that we've had with county schools. And to see what went on with the city schools and know that I would have no recourse is my biggest concern. So I really want to know, what are your plans with these schools, and what involvement will the city school system have to do with any of these, with this annexation? Because now you're going to have oversight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hynut.
Mike Ryan, 5809 East Overall Creek Road, Rockville, Tennessee. Got a quick question, a few questions. The schools are my concern as well. The annexation, I may be completely off base here, but it's my understanding that the owner of the property has to request annexation. If Rutherford County has not requested annexation of their schools, how can the city annex that property?
Who's next?
John Fuller, 412 Dalton Drive, Rockvale, Tennessee. And I had a couple of questions. One question had to do with the student content at the schools. Now, if the schools are absorbed by Murfreesboro, do all the current students continue to go to Rockvale, or is it only going to serve students in Murfreesboro? And if that's the case, then where will students be going? So that's question one. Question two, I believe there's a new fire station being built on the property, and it's currently county. So does that will that fire station then serve the county in the area, or will they only serve Murfreesboro? I'm just not sure. I'm assuming you guys can shed some light on that. In addition, the school property, I believe, extends further than what's highlighted on the map. And if the school property in its entirety is being annexed, does that include the stuff that's not on the, not highlighted on the map? And if it's not, then, you know, what happens to that property? So, and then I had questions around the traffic control as well, but I think
Okay.
the gentleman over here already covered that. Okay, that's all I had to say.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fuller. Who else?
Brett Neal, 408 Dalton Drive. When the lady said that they were bringing city services to the subdivisions north of the schools, I actually live in Clear Ridge, and it looks like the city wraps our entire subdivision. And I don't think we have any city services. Is that part of what this is incorporating? And there's a new subdivision directly across the street from Clear Ridge that in the mornings and the evenings, you honestly can't get out in either direction from either subdivision to go left. Are they going to put a red light there was one of my questions. And the last one would be, there's a, on the map here, it shows at the very top right-hand corner, that's a new subdivision. It also comes in back behind, at the very end of Clear Ridge, they've started a new subdivision. They've got all the plumbing in the ground, all the sewer system. They're still tat every day doing that. Where does that end? Will they be coming back towards what they call the shoals? Because when this property first came up on Highway 99 12 years ago or something like that, they said they were never going to build on the shoals. And the shoals start at about the middle of my property, going up towards the top of the hill, and it has sinkholes that are deeper than this room and bigger than this room. There's 50 of them back there. That's what I'm trying to get clarification on. Any information y'all could offer on that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else? Anybody?
My name's Brady Allred, 5871 East Overall Creek Road, Rockvale. My question is, at this time, the county has done a lot of improvements. Matter of fact, they're building a new fire station, building on the elementary school. Is the city going to take this debt load? Are they going to pay the county back for their improvements? Are they going to pay for the debt? I imagine it's bonds. I don't know how they financed it. And also, I'd like someone to tell me what is the city's motivation for wanting to annex the school property when it's working fine. People of the community in Rockvale have always identified with the school, even when it was at the old location. And now, if you annex it, you're taking away the representation on the council and on the school board and put it in the city. So in other words, you're taking their identity away. And I just wonder if somebody could answer those two questions, because I don't see that this is necessary, because the county is operating it and doing a great job at it. And I'd like to know the city's motivation behind this. Is this to make things contiguous where they can continue their annexation rampage? My son-in-law had a good idea. He said that we could put a City of Murfreesboro city limit sign and a 5-gallon bucket where we could keep moving it, and they wouldn't have to make it permanent. And so I wish somebody had answered the question on motivation. Why do they want to do this? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Who else got questions? Anybody? Have you been up here once?
Can I say something real quick?
Sorry.
Appreciate it.
Got to give everybody one chance, sorry. All at once, not divided up. 10 seconds here, 10 seconds there. Got to do it all at once. Anybody else that would like to speak that has not spoken so far tonight? Okay. We'll close the public hearing. And we have lots of questions. And I think
Can I take the school ones real fast?
I'll be happy to. I'd like to have some big picture discussion to begin with from, looks like Mr. Huddleston, for the motivation, the big picture, what is the city doing, why are we doing this?
Thank you, Chair Jones.
That'll answer a lot of questions.
There's a lot of questions, a lot of good questions, a lot of practical questions. We'll be glad to try to respond to those for the Plan Commission and those in attendance tonight. So what I'd really like to do is maybe dial back the clock and look at a sewer agreement that was between the city and the county and Rutherford County Schools. I think that sewer agreement was signed in 2006 that proposed to extend sewer to the Rockville area. And one particular statement that was in that sewer agreement said that when sewer is extended into the Rockville area, it would include an expectation of urban development. And so I guess what I'm saying to you tonight is that this domino was tipped in 2006 when we ran sewer into that area. And our expectation when we run sewer is that it be developed on an urban density. It was sized for an urban density. We established a cost recovery district out there to be able to do that as well. And so, I think what it really set in motion was the idea that the city would eventually annex to this area to allow connections to our city sewer and development to city standards. More recently, when we looked at the Ferrari property, and sewer was extended to that property, so there was an expectation created by that property owner and future owners that it would have access to that sewer. We responded by saying, yes, we believe it would be appropriate for us to annex this. We put that in motion in 2006. We proposed at that time to Rutherford County to do a non-contiguous annexation, and we believed we had offered a very fair agreement with Rutherford County to allow an interlocal agreement to allow for the management of emergency services in roads and streets, and that proposal reached it fell on unreceptive ears at Rutherford County, and so then for us to follow the state rules for our annexation process, we determined that we needed to make the Ferrari property compliant. The option was to annex the right-of-way of State Route 99. And so why we're here before you tonight is that our original proposal in extending city services to the Ferrari property was based on a rejection of our plan by Rutherford County. And then with that said, once we determined that the right-of-way needed to be in play and study that for annexation, we also looked at the school situation. I think Ms. Russ covered our motivations on that very well, in that if we're going to annex the right-of-way, and if these schools already have access to our city sewer, then it would be appropriate for us to be able to have some jurisdiction over what interactions the school have with the roadway and the school has with other city services. And so we felt like it was appropriate to at least study the school properties as well and understand the impacts of that. And also, I think, quite honestly, for Rutherford County to understand the potential benefits of being annexed into the city and having full access to those listed city services. So, does that help with our motivation and why we recommended bringing this to you and to study it for annexation? And I'd be glad to delve into that more, talk about the nuances of it to the extent that you would like tonight.
Well, so back to the first speaker, help us understand, and maybe you just explained it by the timing of this for our property or whatever the name of it was, the thought process back when we did hear this in April to where we are today. What changed?
Well, I think city staff reacted really, quite honestly, based on some of the same public testimony we got about the school zone and the operations of the school zone, and we do believe that improvements are needed out there. We just didn't want to sign up for them, quite honestly. This was it's a state route. A lot has been set in motion out there with the county schools that are there. We didn't have an ability to impact that outcome, and so we were hesitant to take it on, understanding that it would create some additional demand for services from the city, and also some additional spending from the city to address that.
So are we at a point that if we do annex it, back to the gentleman's question about some of the traffic study improvements, are we going to make those? When I say we, the city of Murfreesboro are going to make those improvements, or?
Yes, to the extent that they will follow our long list of needed traffic improvements.
Okay.
And so, as far as the prioritization and recommendations from city staff on what we can take on, and then the ability to fund those improvements through capital programs or general fund programs. And I'm looking at two of our council members tonight. They're very fully aware of the budget review and approval and capital review and approval process. We don't move them to the front of the line just because they were annexed. We put them in the line like we do with any other needed improvements in our city, and so they would become part of that mix. I think the other thing that's worth noting is that most of the improvements that are needed here, quite honestly, are off of the right-of-way. They're actually on the school properties themselves, and so for that to be a successful traffic improvement, we've got to have the cooperation of Rutherford County Schools, and without that being in our jurisdiction, we feel like we have very little leverage with Rutherford County if the property is not in our jurisdiction. We can ask, we can suggest, we can recommend, but we have very little real power there. And so by annexing those properties, we perhaps can exercise a little more control and a little more authority about the access and circulation and changes on the school properties that have an impact on traffic.
So Sam, one of the gentlemen asked, how can the city annex this property if Rutherford County hasn't asked for it? Can you explain that, or?
Well, and I'd be glad to let this legal question be answered by the legal department, but quite honestly, we're not going to violate the state law on that. And so we are in a position where Rutherford County is going to have to make a decision where they want city services and city sewer at this and other school properties, or if they don't. And so this is not just a one school question. This is a recurring question. And quite honestly, one of the challenges for Rutherford County Schools, because some of our rural areas don't have access to sanitary sewer, they really need the help of the incorporated communities, town of Smyrna, city of Laverne, and Rutherford and Murfreesboro, because we do have sewer systems. And to put the kind of daytime population and daytime density that we expect at these campuses, 3,000 to 5,000 people, you've got to have a municipal sewer system there. And I think Rutherford County Schools will have to make the decision: do we need to continue to rely on that resource that the city can make available to us, or are we going to be okay in building our school programs without access to city sewer? And I think that'll be a question for them. What I can say is that we can't continue to ignore the impacts that schools have on traffic. And I really feel so strongly about that I don't think as a community we can ignore those impacts and continue to let them happen without doing our job for the community. I'm looking at our council members that have to deal with the complaints too, and I think they would share that with us, that we can't ignore the impacts of schools. Yes, they're expensive. Yes, it's costly. Yes, traffic is hard around them. But in the future, we really need to do a better job at dealing with those schools than we have in the past. And I think for us at this point, it's if you need our sewer, then we need your cooperation. If you're okay with going forward without our sewer, then we will have to sit in the corner and be quiet, I suspect. So it's a pivotal point for our community in looking at how we deal with schools and traffic and serving them with sewer.
If I may add to that, please, the proposal from staff is to study, and staff has studied and is here with requesting a recommendation. And when we were met with silence at our request for an interlocal agreement, we then looked to see the possibility of annexing the right-of-way. And I think in staff's understanding, and of course, none of these are decisions. We're studying and making recommendations. And to the person who asked about how can we make the county, we cannot make the county ask for annexation. If the county and county schools decline to ask for annexation, these will not be annexed. However, we feel as staff that if we're going to look at annexing that road and taking the responsibilities that go along with that road being a city street, we need to study these significant contiguous properties that have a huge impact on that road. And what will be the ultimate decision, regardless of of a recommendation tonight, what ultimate decision will be made by council, we don't know. And there's a lot of aspects to this, but certainly I can say that if the county does not request annexation, it will not be annexed. Under current state law, we cannot force an annexation of that, and certainly wouldn't try to do that. That'd be, foolish. We certainly wouldn't do that.
And thank you, Mr. Ives, for the continued explanation. They're very, very helpful to set the stage on that.
But just to clarify, Mr. Ives, you stated that there had been a request for an interlocal agreement, and by that, the request was to the county for
Correct.
an interlocal agreement for the improvements to be made to Highway 99.
Well, not necessarily improvements. The state, and I can't quote it exactly, but state law essentially says that if you're going to have a non-contiguous annexation, the city and county need to enter into an interlocal agreement with respect to the intervening roadways, bridges, roads, emergency services, that whatever would be involved in that. We made a proposal to the county. It was rejected by silence. We made a revised proposal which was met with the same fate. So we, and again, in looking to annex the Ferrari property, which we believe was fully intended and expected to be annexed someday, when sewer was extended to it in cooperation and with the county and the county schools, and to how to affect that annexation. So we're looking now at, to get staff's recommendation in the first place was don't annex this road, leave it with the state and the county, and just annex this property is not, the Ferrari property is non-contiguous. At least one interpretation of state law is that there has to be an interlocal agreement. You can't have an interlocal agreement if one party won't agree. So we're looking at an alternative, at an option, which is to annex the roadway, and as part of that study, to study whether or not we should recommend and pursue with the county annexation of these two properties that have obviously, as I said, a huge impact on that roadway. So.
And I think to add to that, it doesn't prohibit us from studying.
Right. No, we can study any property, and
yes,
what this body recommends and what council ultimately decides to do is a separate question. But, and it's certainly not unusual to study broadly. In fact, it's fairly frequent that when a property comes in, we study broader than that property, and we may or may not recommend more property, but we study more and then make a recommendation and or request a recommendation from Planning Commission, and then council ultimately makes a decision of what, if anything, to annex. But we often try to study broadly and then sometimes that reveals things that we then work out with another landowner.
Sean, you want to
Yeah,
help
I'm
us out
gonna-
on the schools?
Yeah, I'll talk
part
about the
here?
schools. There are multiple county schools that are inside the Murfreesboro city limits. Just because the city annexes the schools does not make them Murfreesboro city schools. Elementary schools, just off the top of my head, Barfield and Blackman are both county elementary schools inside the Murfreesboro city limits. High schools, Siegel, Blackman, Oakland, Riverdale, all four inside the Murfreesboro city limits. So just because we annex the properties, there's still county schools owned by the county in the city limits. So it doesn't change the curriculum, it doesn't change who's running the schools themselves. They are still county schools, just inside the city limits, just like every one of those schools I just named and a few more. So this doesn't change who your kids are going to school with or who they're zoned to or anything like that. These are still county schools all around there.
Doesn't change the curriculum, all that kind of stuff.
The other question I think that was asked was about the fire station, which is a similar situation there. Rutherford County asked for permission to connect an EMS fire station that's actually located on the elementary property, and they would continue to be responsible for jurisdictions that are outside the city service boundary, and our fire department would become the primary responder in the event of a need or a call in this area, either on Highway 99 or at either one of the Rockville schools. And we do have Fire Station 10 that sits at Veterans Parkway and State Route 99. It's just a mile or so away. And so those would, those services would, the county's units would continue to respond to properties that are outside the city limits. It's also a pretty expected thought from our emergency services providers that if we had a significant incident at Rockville School of any kind, that our desire to be a mutual aid help to Rutherford County, whether they're the first responding agency or the city is the first responding agency, that there will be cooperation in that mutual aid agreements that are already in place.
And the city would not be intending to reimburse the county for their investment in their own county fire station? As the one man was just questioning then, if
No, I think,
the
and I think the
city
service boundary for that fire station is certainly much broader than the several dozens of acres of the Rockville School campus.
Right. Thank you.
And then, Mr. Huddleston, the question from the gentleman talking about the property down, I don't remember the name he called it, the extending the property that he said would never be developed, that is in the county area, so that would be something he would need to talk to the county about, correct?
Yeah, I think if you were talking, was it the gentleman that talked about the shoals?
Yes, there you go.
And I didn't comprehend, nor did Mr. Blomley comprehend the exact area he was talking about. I do believe he said he was in the Clear Ridge Drive subdivision, Clear Ridge, off of Clear Ridge. And so I do believe that's Salem Landing?
Well, there's Salem Landing that's kind of to the northeast of Clear Ridge, and then there's the subdivision Mr. Taylor was the engineer on directly to the north. Looking at him down here.
So former Rick Womack property.
Yeah, the former Womack property. Salem Oaks. And I think Salem Oaks is the one that's directly to the north of the homes on Clear Ridge Drive.
And so if the gentleman would not mind contacting our office perhaps tomorrow by phone, if he'd asked for Mr. Blomley, he could step him through what plans we have approved and the current status of those plans. I don't think anything has advanced on the Salem Oaks at this point, even though they do have an approved zoning plan.
Yeah, approved preliminary plat, I believe. And he did mention that his subdivision does not receive city services. It's because it is in the county, and just as Mr. Ives mentioned, without something in writing from a property owner, we cannot annex property that's in the county. So I think his subdivision for the foreseeable future, unless folks came to us en masse and requested annexation in writing, to which we would initiate a study, it will remain in the county and not receive city services.
Thank you.
And then I think there was one more question about the status of driveways and signalization, and certainly our current signalized intersection at Veterans and New Salem creates a boundary for us there, but as a general rule, we require adequate separation between new signals, and so there would be a traffic study and warrants analysis that would need to be prepared to look at signalizing any additional intersections down through there. Certainly there are several candidates for that, and generally being those driveways or roadways that connect into a larger traffic network or a larger development mass, so that we can serve multiple properties with the installation of a signal. But we have not looked at a signal master plan or having looked at any traffic studies. The developments that the city has approved there are fairly new and are just now coming online, and we're seeing residents move in there. Mr. Blomley tracks those numbers a little bit, and he probably doesn't recall off the top of his head how many permits have been issued in some of those sections.
I don't recall off the top of my head.
But those are coming online. Usually it's a 5 to 10 year build out for a multi-phase, multi-section subdivision before those get fully built out and occupied. But that would be something that would be worked out between city traffic staff and TDOT on the potential to signalize some of those locations.
There was a question or a comment made that maybe the study area did not include the entire campus or the entire land ownership of the county.
So Rutherford County on the high school and middle school side, and I think that exhibit's still up for your viewing pleasure there, but in this area right here, that continues Rutherford County's property to the south and then to the east, and I think that extends almost to Thompson Road, but it does not include any physical improvements. So it's open land, it's forested or grown over, and so there's nothing there really to receive city services. There's no building, there's no daytime populations.
I see.
Sewer's not there, so it didn't seem appropriate to study beyond the physical improvements of the high school and middle school campus.
And what is on the map before you is what we advertised. So to expand the study area to include the rest of the property would include re-advertisement. But as Mr. Huddleston mentioned, we went for the area that was developed, that would be requiring city services along Highway 99. It seemed the most logical to include that portion of the property.
At some point in the future, Rutherford County Schools may have an alternate use for that. It does have sewer available to it. I can't personally imagine what that might be today, but they do own the property. It would have access to other services through their property, including electric and water, and so it's conceivable that at some point Rutherford County or Rutherford County Schools could choose to utilize that in some way that we don't foresee now, but I wouldn't expect that to happen in the next 5 to 10 years based on what we know about the school's growth plans.
I do appreciate, I think, so many of the questions were in regards to what would happen to the schools themselves if they became city schools, and they're still going to be county schools, just they would be sitting on city property if the annexation went through. I think that's
Ms. Jones, if I may, I just wanted to mention this. Our city ordinance that deals with outside the city sewer extension includes very specific language about expectations on connecting to city sewer and remaining outside the city property. It includes following the Plan Commission, and Building Code and the zoning ordinance and our subregs, plumbing, electrical code, following city rules on all of that. But there's also a very explicit statement in there that serving outside the city sewer customers also requires them not to oppose annexation. I know that's in our city code, but it does create an expectation that when we extend outside the city sewer services, that there's a reasonable expectation that the city may study that property and may request that you consent to annexation at some point in the future. We generally get that drafted into an agreement for the Rockvale School Complex. The agreement that we have in front of us is simply the agreement to extend sewer. So I would say that our expectation is that when we do that, and our city code says that, but at the end of the day, it would really be a decision up to Rutherford County, and possibly not the school board, but wouldn't suggest to understand all of their jurisdictions, but I think this property is actually owned fee simple by Rutherford County, and the school board happens to be the caretaker of it.
Okay.
So before you leave, so I think in one of the questions, we didn't quite cover it in enough detail, and one was the improvements for the traffic. And I know we talked about the road, that we would be taking on the road, but there were a lot of improvements that was needed on the site. Who pays for those improvements? Because it's still managed by the schools or by the county.
County.
My expectation on that today would be that that would be a budget item, a cost item for Rutherford County or Rutherford County schools.
Right. That's what I thought.
You know, it's outside of the city-owned properties. It's outside of the public right-of-way. While it is another government property, I think it would take a very specific and direct act of the mayor and council to agree to fund those off right-of-way and off-city property roadway improvements. There's a little cited statement in our charter that for the city to spend more than $1,000 on private property, and I would again look at this as not city property. It requires a specific act of the mayor and council. But I think that'd have to be a very deliberate thing for us to bring before the mayor and council, and I think there would have to be a very compelling reason that the city would decide to fund that.
Right.
Now, the city of Murfreesboro and Rutherford County schools, we're not going anywhere anytime soon. We've worked together in the past. We've had tough spots in the past. We've got to work together in the future. We'll have other challenges in the future. Our community faces challenges in growth and transportation and education. I'm not sharing anything with this Plan Commission that you don't already know. But we'd have to have a very compelling reason to bring back a funding proposal to complete off-site roadway improvements. That being said, Rutherford County has a lot of things and a lot of projects and things going with the city of Murfreesboro. Rutherford County Schools has a lot of things going inside the city and adjacent to the city. We have an interest in and around our community for roadways and transportation and stormwater and floodplain management. So it's a possibility that this gets wrapped into a larger thing someday. I don't know, but I would say today my suggestion would be that it would need to be funded by Rutherford County.
Okay, thank you.
Did everybody get all the questions answered that we went over? I think I about marked everything out.
If there are.
Can I make a comment before you make a motion? I get why we are studying this. I understand that it can't happen unless Rutherford County agrees to it, or agrees to wanting to be annexed. I would just hope that we, irrespective of this going through or not, that we could come together on this intergovernmental agreement, whatever it was called, or at least have some discussion so that there's, everybody has a clear picture of what their responsibility is, whether it's city or county. I'd just like to see us do the best we can to work together with respect to that.
Both sides communicate.
Yeah, yeah. That's just a comment.
Move for approval, subject to all staff comments.
I believe that was a motion. Do we hear a second?
I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? All right, so very good discussion. This is our recommendation to City Council, so it will go on to the next level. We'll go from there. Thank you all for coming out again tonight. We appreciate it. And we will give them a chance to walk on out, and we are going to move on with the rest of our meeting tonight. And if you all could go on outside for the rest of your discussion, we appreciate it, so we can continue our meeting. Thank you. Next, we have staff reports and other business. Our first item there is a mandatory referral to consider the We have a mandatory referral to consider the abandonment of a sanitary sewer easement located along Stone Center Lane in the Stonebridge at Three Rivers Development. John Miner of SEC Inc. is the applicant. Got me all flustered there. Ms. Kerr. Where's Ms. Kerr?
I'm going to pinch hit for Ms. Kerr tonight.
Mr. Blumley, go for it. All right.
Ms. Kerr had two mandatory referrals on the agenda. The first one is for a sanitary sewer and water line easement abandonment in the Stonebridge at Three Rivers Development. And if we could put up my computer screen, it is in this phase of Stonebridge that is at the very southern portion of their development. There is what was platted as a water line easement that kind of goes down south and then loops back around. There's a portion that's 20 feet wide. There's a portion that's 36 or 37 feet wide. And talking with the Water Resources Board, the Water Resources staff, they think that was probably an error on the plat, that the 36-foot wide easement should have been a sanitary sewer and water line easement on the plat, because it actually does have sanitary sewer infrastructure in it. So the applicant has requested that those easements be abandoned, and then they're going to do a wholesale relocation of those easements. And the Water Resources Department staff concurs with their request, has already vetted with our legal department the new easements, and feels that they're better positioned within the development per the existing construction plans and the proposed utility locations. One thing that I would mention is that these easements are labeled also as waterline easements. What we're doing here is we're abandoning any interest the city has in these easements. Just wanted to note that this is in Consolidated Utility District service area for water. So we can't fully abandon the easements because CUD has the waterline easement rights to this area. So in order to complete the abandonment of the easements, they'll have to go through CUD's easement abandonment process too. But this would, at the very least, abandon the city's interest in those easements. And so the Water Resources Board met late last month and recommended the approval of this request. and we recommend that this request be approved subject to the applicant providing the legal department all the necessary documentation, including any needed legal descriptions and exhibits required to prepare and record the legal instrument, and that the legal instrument will be subject to final review and approval of the city legal department. And number two, the applicant will be responsible for recording the legal instrument, including payment of any recording fees. So we would recommend that you recommend approval to the city council of this easement abandonment request. Be happy to answer any questions.
So moved, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Love you, Matthew.
All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, we have a mandatory referral to consider the abandonment of a sanitary sewer easement located on property at the southeast corner of Franklin Road and Veterans Parkway. Richard Blasey of Bergman Associates is the applicant. Again, Mr. Blomley?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
There was a site plan recently approved for a Circle K located at the southeast corner of the intersection of Franklin Road and Veterans Parkway. There is a small easement on the property right here that will conflict with the proposed site design of the Circle K development, and the infrastructure that is contained within that easement, it will no longer be needed with the development of the Circle K. And so they have, Circle K and their engineering firm have requested abandonment of that small easement along the southern border of that property. The Water Resources Department staff concurs with the request, and the Water Resources Board at its meeting last month recommended approval of the easement abandonment. And so we would recommend that you recommend approval of lots of recommendations. We would recommend that you make a recommendation to the City Council to approve the easement abandonment subject to the same conditions that I read just a moment ago. Be happy to answer any questions.
So moved, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, we have a mandatory referral to consider the abandonment of certain Greenway Trail easements and approval of an agreement for conservation easement for Greenway Trail purposes located on property along Medical Center Parkway and the Stones River. The City Legal Department is the applicant. Mr. Ives.
Good evening, and thank you. Matthew, can you pull up the drawing that is associated with this?
Sure.
Okay, and if, there we go. Back in 2008, as we were planning a variety of trail improvements, we dedicated a greenway, the city dedicated a greenway trail easement over what's shown here as Lot 10 at the top of near the top right of the page, and also along the strip that's shown as attachment, as A on this page. The plan at that time was that Lot 10 would be, all of that would be a park area associated with the trail. And since that time, the city staff and planning, Park and Rec had abandoned the idea of that area being a park. And in fact, that entire property was sold a couple of years ago to Swanson Developments. Somehow in the title work, we missed this easement on that property. And so at what we're doing now, we need to clean this up and clean up the title to the property that we sold to Swanson's. So we're asking you to approve us abandoning the easement on track 10. With respect to on A, we wrote a fairly simple blanket trail easement. That property has actually been sold now to Notes Live or Sunset on the Stones River. And with the agreement with them is that the easement we put on would be removed, and we will put on that same property the conservation easement for Greenway Trail purposes, which spells out the rights and responsibilities of both us and the Notes Live folks much better than the blanket easement that we put on in 2008. So we ask your approval to, your recommendation that we abandon both of those easements and then replace the one on parcel A with the new conservation easement. Happy to answer any questions.
I love a good title issue. So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Are there any other staff reports or other business tonight?
Nothing else from me. Thank you.
Okay. If not, we stand adjourned.